inspection reports can be extremely scary. So how do you know how to not get screwed by looking at your inspection report wrong or not understanding something on your report? Looking at those things is imperative to your renovation bid, to surprises that come out, and one of the most important things to review whenever you're dealing with your construction project or an acquisition of a new property, or even selling a property before you sell it. So very important to look at and get inspections before you sell a property so you know what things may come up for that buyer on the back end. So there are some certain things that you should be really focused on when you're reviewing inspections. My name is Mathew Owens. I'm a California licensed CPA. We flipped over 1,000 houses now. We have over 35 million lent out to flippers in different markets, and we've done a ton of value add multifamily. So I've seen my fair share of inspection reports and understand them in detail, and can help you guys understand them so that way you don't spend a lot of money on something that you were unexpectedly came up. So let's start off with some of the big ticket items. So you have to look first at the inspection report on the major systems, okay? The plumbing, the electrical, the HVAC system, the roof, the appliances, the water heaters, the foundations. Those are the big ticket items that really cost a lot of money that you want to get a handle on to make sure that you know what you're doing and you have those costs outlined. Now, most of the time, inspectors are going to disclaim their liability associated with those major systems. They're going to say, hey, the HVAC system looks like it's on its last leg. It may need servicing. There's some issues with it. Have your licensed HVAC technician come in, take a look at it, because that inspector is not going to go take liability on and tell you that it's okay when there's a technician out there that specializes in that space that they can say, hey, go get that quote from them and have them take a look at it. And so you want to be real careful with those disclaimers and make sure that after you review your reports, that you are able to go through line item by line item with your inspector, especially if you don't understand what they're saying or are confused by items in the report. But you want to go through that line item by line item with that inspector and make sure you understand what they truly see at the property. They're going to tell you a lot more things that they're not willing to put in the actual report that you should be looking out for, and it gives you some great strategies to make sure that you're not going to be over budget on your renovation because something surprising came up. So making sure you talk with those inspectors yourself, make sure you understand everything on the report, and making sure that you really line out all the major systems and the useful lives remaining of the items in that report. So for example, if I have a roof that's got 5 years left on it and maybe it's worn, the shingles are okay condition, but look like they might last another 5 years or so, or the next major storm might take it out, you may want to include that roof in your renovation budget, because you never know at any time during that 5 years, that roof could fall apart on you and you need to replace it, which is a significant cost. So making sure that the really aged systems that you're going to keep in place in the property, you've allocated CapEx budget for that or built that into your renovation bid, and maybe you hold that money aside for when that big repair comes up, is absolutely key to your success on any renovation project, so you don't go blow your budget out of the water, which can happen consistently, especially now when inflation has occurred and you have a lot of increases in material costs and labor costs and things like that. What renovations cost 5 years ago is not what they cost today. So making sure that you really understand or dialed in on what new materials and new labor costs are, and you get proper quotes for all of these items, is absolutely key. So there's also some big things that you want to be looking out for specialty contractors that you might need. Maybe you have a general contractor that has the HVAC person, the plumber, the electrician, the roofer, the general maintenance and general cleanup of that property is all handled, but they may not have somebody that deals with, for example, a leaky pool that is leaking into the ground, that is losing water and needs a specialty person to come out and fix that item. They may not have somebody for septic tanks and running lines to the actual street for those septic tanks if you're getting rid of it, or repairing that septic tank as it is. They may not have a really good foundation contractor that is going to be able to really fix that foundation correctly, so that that way water intrusion doesn't get into the property through the foundation and you don't have issues there. They may not have somebody that knows how to grade a property. So in the Midwest, you deal with a lot of weathering issues, something that was a massive surprise to me coming from Southern California. And I get to make fun of all my Midwest clients and investors for, just because of the weather difference here. And of course, they make fun of me for having to pay, higher taxes living in Southern California. So I think they win that argument. But at the same time, I get to do those videos with them showing the sky in Southern California during the dead winter when it's still 75 degrees outside, and they're pretty jealous and upset about it. But then they make fun of me right back. At the same time, going to different markets, you have weather. And so being able to understand grading issues and things like that is key. We had a property that was fine during the summer, and then in the winter, it rained really hard and the water tables rose, and it cost us over $10,000 to trench around the outside of the property, put dry lock in there, put French drains in, make sure all of your gutters have downspout extensions to go away from the house. There's a big job doing that. Sometimes you have to do backfill and that kind of thing to grade it away from your house and things like that. So, there might be a specialty vendor for that type of, activity, right? So you also have potentially sump pumps in basements if there's water intrusion there, or a power line to a street might be needed by the city that might need a specialty contractor, or might take additional time to get that item accomplished and finished and through the renovation process, which you need to add to your renovation timeline if you have to have the city do anything to fix anything on their side. They take forever half the time. 90% of the time they're incompetent, or they don't show up for appointments, or they say they do, or they show up early and then say that you missed them. There's a million things that the city does to cause headaches across the board, that you want to make sure that anytime you're having to deal with the city, that you have an extended timeline associated with that, and you want to review your inspection reports for those types of specifics. Okay. So in addition to that, like I mentioned earlier, you want to be very careful with regard to those disclaimers. An investor or an inspector is actually going to go through and disclaim any major system. So the HVAC system, they may go through and say, hey, yeah, it looks horrible. There's a lot of problems with it. Needs to be cleaned. It's on its last leg. But go talk to your HVAC tech, because those guys are going to be your specialty person there to come in and tell you if you need to replace the system, or if it just needs to be cleaned and serviced, or what needs to be wrong with it. You want to get on the phone with those inspectors to be able to tell you everything that's going on with that specific piece of equipment that they were commenting on. Very important to get on the phone with them in detail. And you also, in addition to your inspectors that you normally would go hire, you also, if you're finishing a renovation and you're trying to get an inspection before you go to market for it, it's always a good idea to do that, so that way you have disclosed upfront items for any buyer, so that they're not scared of those items, and you have an opportunity to fix those things your contractors missed, or things underneath the basement, or foundation issues with the basement, or little things that might come up that might be a $5,000 cost, but in your buyer's mind, that might be a $20,000 fix in their head, or just too scary for them to deal with, and so they cancel the contract. So we always go through and get inspections done before we go sell those assets, so that we know what's there, and we get side-by-side pictures of everything in the report showing it's done for our quality control, with an outline of all the major systems in that asset, with the estimated useful lives and estimated ages of those systems, so that way we have a full understanding of our property in detail. And you also, sometimes in these other cities, they have city inspectors that need to come out and do an occupancy inspection before you're allowed to rent that property or allowed to sell it to a homeowner to live in it. And so getting those inspections done up front is absolutely key as well, because they're going to come up with different items than what your inspector may come up with. And so getting them at the same time so that you can have all those items done at the same time by the contractor is key. So normally you're going to have your contractor go through and finish the renovation job on the project, and then they're going to go through and do a punch list items to get it as clean as possible. Then you're going to go get your inspections done by both the city and your outside inspector to make sure you have your proper quality control outlined and there's no major surprises that come up. And that conversation with that inspector is going to help you with those surprises. If you have to take something down to the studs, there's most definitely going to be some surprises, whether you have to reframe some things from some wood rot or termite issues. All of those types of things can show up afterwards. Maybe you got to rerun plumbing or electrical lines or open up walls. Every single time there's surprises that come up. So you have to budget for those items. And one of the best ways to find out those items up front is having that conversation with your inspector, getting that inspection done up front beforehand, and then getting the inspection when you're done with it as well for that proper quality control. Because unfortunately, you can't rely on your contractors to tell you that they did everything on the project. You have to have the right quality control on the back end. Otherwise, things are just not going to get done. It happened to us before where we came out of pocket tons of money after the fact because we realized our contractor had not done the job that they said they did. And at that time, we didn't have the proper quality control in place. And that's where these quality control procedures were actually born from, is us losing money on projects. So I hope this helped you guys understand a little bit more about the key things you should be looking at when you are getting an inspection on a property and looking at your renovation on a project. If you guys like this content, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And I'm coming out with tons of content consistently on real estate and tips and tricks that you guys can use for practical knowledge when you're operating or buying real estate investments or for your own personal use. Thanks so much. I appreciate it and have a great rest of the day.